how are you going about identifying market needs and enough so that you're ready to develop a new product for it?
We listen to our existing customers. So, for example, 1 out of 4 of our existing customers have a need for a product like this. So then, that's great. We already have X many customers ready to sell a product to. But then we also look at, um, you know, traditional secondary research. How many of these systems are out there? How many air conditioners are out there? We assess the competition. We buy all their products, we tear them apart, we use their app. We kind of determine, can we compete with this or not?
All right. So what's your philosophy on growth when it comes to growing Mysa or similar companies?
Good question. I usually reduce it down to like the bare bones, and trying to keep it very simple, because as we've grown, things get very complex. We have more products, more markets, more marketing channels. And so it's really trying to keep things as simple as possible and focusing on one thing at a time and one new thing at a time. So all throughout, we've kind of focused on, one marketing channel at a time and try to do really well, and either fail fast in that channel and fail hard or succeed and then succeed, kind of create a playbook around it, make sure that we know how to execute, and then move to the next one. And so I kind of look at it as layering a bunch of curves on top of each other, like the typical S curve. Initially you don't get many results, then quickly you'll figure out how to get results, and you get a lot quickly, but then you see diminishing returns. And so that's at a micro level in each of the channels or tactics. But then if you're able to stack a bunch of those curves on top of each other, you can see overall growth continue to accelerate.
Well, that's really an interesting point you say, about simplifying and focusing on one existing thing at a time and one new thing at a time. So if you have to narrow down into a bit more specifics, especially related to Mysa, what would be those tactics or channels or ideas that you would categorize into that strategy of existing and new, and how you refined it as you went?
Yeah. So, and kind of like on the philosophy, everything really starts with understanding the business really well. So for Mysa, we sell smart thermostats to people who have HVAC systems that are more niche. I would say, it's not the majority of people in North America are not even going to be able to purchase one of our products. And so knowing that actually rules out a lot of strategies right off the bat, because, for example, any mass market tactics are immediately less effective because we have so many people that won't be able to use our product. So that in itself informs which channels are more viable than others. And so for us, we started off with Google Ads. And that's because it's such a very specific solution to people with a specific problem. They would be searching for it because there was nobody out there. So that's where we first started. Then Google Ads, you immediately start to think about SEO and organic search, which is the free version of Google Ads, I call it. So we invested there. And the next layer we added was Facebook ads. And then we added Amazon. And, nowadays, for example, we've really scaled up our Facebook. We're spending close to, or last year we spent over $500,000 on Facebook, but we're exploring Interest, for example, or Reddit ads. We've tried multiple times over the last couple of years. And that's another thing. We try things and sometimes they fail, but if they fail, that doesn't mean we rule them out forever. We try again in a year's time, because maybe we've matured to a point where it makes sense, or the platform matured to where it makes sense.
And so was this a trial and error approach based on your market knowledge, or were there customer interviews or any focus groups involved trying to figure that step-by-step process?
lots of unintentional customer interviews in the early days. And so what I mean by that is um, we had live chat on our website. Even before we actually shipped any product, we were taking pre-orders, and we had a live chat widget on our website, and I was on it all the time talking to customers. Other people from the team were talking to customers all the time. And when you do that, you're inadvertently doing customer interviews because you're not selling the product yet, but they're showing interest and you know what questions they ask. But then even when we did launch the product, I spent a couple of weeks where I did about 40 hours worth of customer phone calls. Just initially out of fear from hopefully they like the product, but then as I was talking to people, I actually learned more about them, who they were, what matters to them, how they find products and things like that. So it's in the early days, talking to customers is I would say the single most effective strategy.
I agree completely there. I found the same just in clients that we've had really successful campaigns, like Anthony Insurance, for example. Literally picking up the phone book, talking with 30 people, all of which everybody has insurance, so it's kind of an easy way to find people, and the data starts repeating after 20 conversations, and then you've got some insights you can rest on. So it's
Yeah.
it and an academic viewpoint would say that that's not a big enough sample size, but it is kind of amazing how you can find really hardcore insights in such a short amount of time when you're doing what you were doing.
Yeah, and it's funny you mentioned like 20 people, and I've found the same thing, like anywhere between 10 and 20. Anytime I've done any talking to customers, that's when it starts to repeat. Because all you need to really, you're not trying to do minute optimizations, you're trying to uncover the larger patterns at play. So, 10 to 20 is enough to start to see those, I find usually.
Mm-hmm.
So what would be the difference, like, between, at that day, like on your inclination of like talking with customers and let's say today, what would be the change from there?
Um, the the change is that it's a lot harder to test rapidly and test without consequences, I guess. So where we are now on multi channels, in 2 countries, multiple products, we have over 100,000 people using our products. We can't um, just try stuff and put it out there because now we also have a brand established and things need to be more consistent. So there's a lot more ripple effects of things that we do that have an impact on operations or an impact on our customer support team, or where we used to take a lot of liberties with our messaging and things like that. All of that has to be much more in control now, and they're more, we are now a team of 85 people at Mysa. So there's a lot more even internal, change management to deal with. So we're definitely less nimble, but we're trying to still have an experimentation mindset. And really what it takes is just being intentional about it and not hope that it happens.
So these days, are you more guided by, say, campaign results, sales results? Is that more kind of where you're taking your insights, or are you doing ongoing qualitative research?
I hadn't done any qualitative research for the longest time. So earlier this year, actually, what we did do was establish a customer VIP panel. So we used our email list and we got about 1,000 people to sign up for that. And so we've sent them monthly surveys. They can be very small or a bit more in depth, and we've seen great response rates. But then I've also, I kind of was feeling more and more disconnected from our users. So started this year, I just sent out an email, hey, I'd love to chat with you. And again, I had about 20 people that I had a 30 to 45-minute conversation with. And it was great to just reconfirm some of the things I was thinking, but also uncover some new things. So I'm very happy I did that. And I kind of encourage anybody on my team to try and do the same thing and talk to people. Yeah. So it's a mix of both, but campaign results definitely play a factor, and that's getting a bit harder with all of the attribution changes lately with iOS privacy. So yeah, we're back to basics in a lot of ways as well.
Hmm. And in terms of how are you identifying, like I know your latest product, is it the air conditioning, right? Is sort of the
Yeah.
latest. So how are you going about identifying market needs and enough so that you're ready to develop a new product for it?
Yeah. Has been trial and error as well over the years for us. But in general, I would say we listen to our existing customers. So, for example, 1 out of 4 of our existing customers have a need for a product like this. So then, that's great. We already have X many customers ready to sell a product to. Um, but then we also look at, um, you know, traditional secondary research. How many of these systems are out there? How many air conditioners are out there? We assess the competition. We buy all their products, we tear them apart, we use their app. We kind of determine, can we compete with this or not? And so, for example, to date, we've stayed away from competing with Nest or Ecobee because, 2 behemoths in the industry. We feel like we're not ready yet to compete with them. So we've, intentionally stayed away from that, stayed in the more niche markets. And a big one we use as well is customer reviews. So I'm pretty sure we've read every single customer review on Amazon of our competitors. So that's something we do ahead of building a product. And it really helps with understanding the problems that any product is solving and how closely that's related to what we're currently doing at Mysa. But then it also shows where people are getting annoyed with their competition and where we could potentially have an edge on them. And so that's how we kind of arrive at, okay, this makes sense. And then we do a technical assessment and determine how difficult would it be to build this product. And typically we're a bit naive there. But I think you need to be naive in a startup to actually even get started and do things.
I agree. I'm not renowned for seeing barriers very well. Sort of deal with them as they come. Which if you can stay upright and above ground, then I think that's a winning. It's a good trait to have. Yeah, that's interesting. We're actually posting today a little snippet from the interview with Josh talking about the Slack channel and the customer reviews, and thought that was really cool. But something that didn't come out of what he had shared was that you were using that to understand competitors as well. So
Yeah.
that's really interesting. I never thought of that to look at reviews to see what they're doing good, what they're doing bad, and use that to develop new products. That's smart. Just a question I have around. We'll kind of move on here to kind of more of a marketing discussion. There's a couple of things that I think Zach mentioned about. I don't know if you can remember, but like there was like a growth framework or something that you brought back in the early days that really helped them kind of simplify the future. Can you recall what that involved?
Um, Not sure. Well, it was a Frankenstein of a lot of growth concepts. I went very, very deep into just the growth marketing side of things. And, a book, for example, that we use a lot from was Hacking Growth. And so the framework really is lever starting with a brainstorm and ideas and as many as possible, and then ranking them in a very simple way, because you can take ranking ideas to a science as well, and then you spend weeks trying to rank ideas rather than try them. And so we use the ICE framework for ranking them. So score of 1 out of 10 on impact, 1 out of 10 on confidence that it will actually have that impact, and then a 1 out of 10 on ease of execution. So what the framework does is it favors easy ideas that are of relatively high impact. Because what you're not trying to do in the early days is take very big bets that either work or don't, because you don't have time to take a big bet and fail and then try again. So it intentionally favors the relatively small, easy wins and then stack them on top of each other. And so that's what we used. And what we did, we treated every idea as an experiment. So we had a big, it was just a Google document really with experiment IDs. And so for every experiment, we wrote up what is the hypothesis. So for example, If we target people who like iOS on Facebook, we're going to see a 10% increase in click-through rate or something like that. And then we did the experiment design. So what's our control group? What's our test? And how long are we going to run this experiment for? And then we did a retrospective look back. Were we right or were we wrong? And the idea was more so to, move through all of these experiments quickly and try a lot of things, but don't try them willy-nilly. Do things based on a solid hypothesis. I really believe in, definitely as a marketer, if you have a solid understanding of user psychology, some of my favorite books are behavioral economics and psychology, because it allows you to create really, really good hypotheses that are more likely to actually result in something. And so we use that as the basis to run a lot of ideas through, especially for the first year or so.
Mm-hmm. And the other question was just on SEO. Can you talk about just how you guys have been successful with organic Google AdWords, as you said, or the free Google AdWords?
Yeah, extremely targeted SEO efforts. So essentially, it was trying a lot of long tail keywords with phrases that make sense for us, that are sort of lower in the funnel, and just using the tools at hand like Ahrefs, and we use Moz as well at times, but I find them useful directionally, but not from it's not going to give you any answers as to what content to develop. So it was really doing a lot of keyword research through Google, and then actually just being somebody who is searching. So searching for those keywords, am I getting an answer to my question? Yes or no? And then if the answer was no, then we would just write a blog post about it. We didn't invest too much effort or time or design resources into each blog post. We would just get it out. If it starts ranking on page 1, then we invest in design. So, one example that we found that is still to date, or the number one blog post for us bringing in traffic, is people were searching the best thermostat for multiple zones in your home. And I remember the top 2 articles were help desk articles from Nest, and that were not even relevant to the question at hand. So we wrote a blog post. This is the best thermostat for multiple zones, and that's been our top post for three years now. So I find for us, SEO is really successful by being extremely targeted with long tail keywords. We're not trying to compete on smart thermostat. We're trying to compete on smart thermostat for baseboard heaters or anything like that. And then I find all you need really is 4 to 5 wins to start seeing the impact of your efforts in SEO on a meaningful level in the business.
So, today, like in your SEO keywords mix, what do you feel is the ratio that drives the biggest amount of leads to you?
The ratio from for SEO and paid, or within SEO organic specifically?
Yeah, like within SEO, you would have, let's say, a set of X keywords, but out of X, only really like 1/10 generate the maximum amount of leads for you.
I'm not entirely sure on a keyword level, but on a individual page or post level, there are like 10 that are really driving all of the volume, and we have over 50. So it's definitely, I think it'll probably get close to that 20-80 rule, where 20% of the content you put out there is going to drive 80% of your results. And that's why we kind of put it out there and only invest further in it when it's bringing in results, because otherwise it would take too long.
Right. And how do you see that going from here with your SEO?
From here, I think, well, we just launched a new product. So this year, all of our efforts have been on doing the exact same thing over again for that specific product. And we're actually, I'm very happy because 3 of those posts are now in our top 10 already. So we did some. It's really nice to see that whatever framework and strategy we used 3 years ago is still working today.
Hmm. Because I know like there's different schools of thought out there of like posting two blog posts a week, one a week, or and when you say 50, that's like a lower number than I was expecting, considering like how long you guys have been around. So what's your philosophy on that in terms of like the amount of content you're putting out there?
It has to serve a purpose. I don't think it matters at all. If you can hit 2 posts a week where the content is actually of high quality and somebody out there needs that content, that would be great. But I find it's really hard to find those exact topics as well, because ultimately, if you think about how you use Google, you typically use it either you have a question you need an answer for, it's from some kind of entertaining purpose, or you're looking for products or solutions. But it's one of those four things typically, and so it's really all about figuring out the questions people are asking that are relevant to your product, and then creating content for that. And I find that is not an easy task, because the first 5 or 10 are easy, but then to keep it relevant and of high quality is more challenging. So we've used tools like answerthepublic.com, for example, where you can just put in a topic and it spits out a bunch of questions people are actually Googling, and it's just great for ideation.
And does the platform Quora play a role into it?
Which one?
Uh, Quora, Quora.
Um, yeah, it's definitely part of the ideation and kind of seeing what people are asking. Yeah, we've explored core in the past, actually, with ads or even an organic strategy where we would try to ask questions and also answer them, but that didn't really work out.
And like your qualitative research, would you have drawn questions from that as well?
Yeah, definitely. So one of the insights, for example, from talking to customers, is that a lot of people use our product in a secondary home or vacation home, and as well as Airbnbs. So we've done some posts specifically targeted to those personas. So, the best smart home upgrades for your vacation home, or how to manage energy in your Airbnb, or things like that. So yeah, definitely.
And, and final question on that is like, this Riverside tool we're using. I was trying to figure out how do I get three unique video channels in Zoom, because it didn't seem to be able to do it. And there's a video came up. First thing I clicked, and it's Riverside saying, here's a tool that allows you to get three different video channels. And now we're a customer. So I'm curious about like if you're using video content, or is it all like static blog content? How does that work?
Mostly static blog content. Yeah, we don't really have the bandwidth to do video content that quickly, or because a lot of it that you would create also fails and doesn't get any eyeballs. So we try to video content is mainly or video capabilities are mainly focused towards where we put a lot of money. So Facebook ads, for example, or Instagram, well, both the same, really.
Gotcha. So we're about halfway through. One of the overall questions we have is kind of like if you were speaking with a business that is like Mysa was starting out in that first couple of years, trying to get traction, trying to find customers, trying to survive, I guess, and or maybe they're surviving but they're trying to scale. Like I something that we hear a lot is companies come to us and they're not sure kind of where to start when it comes to putting a marketing program in place. And there's a certain amount where we can help as an outside partner, but there's also, of course, needs to be an internal leadership there, and sort of roadmap that they are implementing day in and day out. So I'm just curious, like what would be the starting point for a company looking to put a formal marketing pipeline in place, and then how do they build that? What would be the fundamentals there?
The first thing that jumps to my mind is to throw out any preconceived notions of what a marketing program should look like. I think in the early days, trying to copy companies that you like or that you see, and for example, saying, well, we need to be on Facebook and on this, and we need to do this, and we need to do that, is really putting your eggs in too many baskets. And it's going to dilute all of the efforts. Because in the very early days, I can't stress enough how important it is to just focus on one or two things and get them right, and then add everything else. And so I often see people, yeah, but company so and so does 5 organic social posts a day or whatever it may be. We have to do that. Well, the answer is no, you don't really. You have to do whatever works for you. And so that mindset calibration, I'll call it, at the start is absolutely crucial. But then it goes to, again, understanding your customers. How do they purchase? For us, it was a lot of early adopters. They were very techy, so they go to Google. So that's where we started, and then you can add everything else later. But it's really finding the beachhead where you're going to start with your marketing program, and that is by far the most important thing.
And how has your like focus between like acquisition and awareness evolved over the years?
Yeah, this year is where we're really starting to invest more in even just general brand awareness. So that's, it took us 3 years or so to get to that point where we're now starting to invest in higher level brand awareness, where we're not going directly for the sale or for the product. And I think this is the right timing, because there's a lot of low hanging fruit out there. And it's very inefficient to move away from that too quickly. So now we're actually going to run our first TV ad this year in the fall. But even that, we're doing in a very tactical and controlled way. We're only going to do it in Quebec City, for example, and then compare results with Montreal.
Okay. Interesting.
And yeah, when you say like this change in focus, like in this year awareness, we also mentioned about like a heavy spending on Facebook earlier. So like, let's say if we were to pick Facebook, and would you say that there is a difference between acquisition and awareness when you approach, let's say, particularly Facebook?
Yeah. So we have like 4 funnel stages, I would say, especially when we're looking at Facebook. So lowest of the funnel is retention. So we do run Facebook ads to existing customers, because we know actually about 25 to 30% of our annual sales are from return customers. So we do run Facebook ads to them. That's very minimal budget, but it does have a high return. One step up is remarketing. So anybody, we used to be more granular with add to cart versus viewed product, but now after iOS changes, we're just lumping everything together to maximize our audience size in one remarketing bucket. And then we have what we call acquisition, which is to people who haven't heard from us, so that cold audiences. But this year we're also doing now one level up, which is just general brand awareness. And aside from the brand awareness campaign in Facebook, everything else is optimizing for conversions. So even at the acquisition level to cold audiences, we were optimizing for conversions and purchases. Now with awareness, we're going more for clicks and traffic, and really to try and get people to engage with us and know us, and then we'll hit them later.
So, any other questions on that, Vish?
No, that's great. No, that's a very fascinating like distinction in terms of like how you can just really look at it from an acquisition and like an awareness perspective, even on channels like Facebook. It's easier to relate it when it comes to like Google, because you have the keywords, the search intent, and you can tailor it based on that. But when you go to channels like Facebook, where you don't know or you don't have any search intent, but it's a very interesting approach to like just how you can tailor your campaign on channels like that, and yet be more focused in the beginning and then scale up as you go forward.
And can you talk about the brand side of things? That's something that we find, in certain industries, we have to spend more time explaining the importance of a brand, and uh, and then trying to explain how that pays off in the future. Can you talk about that in terms of just your philosophy on brand and how you've guided Mysa's brand to date?
Yeah. Brand is it's interesting in all, I think, in all aspects, internally or even externally. When we talk to, I think everybody has a slightly definition of what brand means, even if you kind of think you're always aligned, but it is very subjective in a way. To me, brand is it's kind of similar. Companies or organizations are similar to people, and so when you meet somebody somewhere at a party or networking event, when you go home, what do you think about that person? How would you describe that person to somebody else? And that's kind of how I think of brand. And so if you extrapolate that analogy, the key things are all the majority of interactions. So I don't think every interaction has to be 100% on brand, but the majority of them should be. And by interaction, I mean anything from first website visit to, the checkout process, to receiving the product, to talking to our customer support team. All of those are very important touch points that kind of define the personality of our brand as somebody perceives it. And so very early on, we did some secondary research into other players in the market, even Ecobee and the others. And, we're selling thermostats, which is inherently not the sexiest topic in the world. So we decided to make our brand more friendly and approachable and talk about, we use emojis and we use very friendly language and smiley faces, and we call our customers and leads, we call them friend all the time. So we're trying to be that more friendly voice in a boring industry, really, the, thermostats, HVAC, although it is smart home, which is great for the techies, but we want to sell to more people than just the techies. So those were the beginnings, and then we've really put a lot of focus on our customer support. The unboxing, the first 30 minutes of the product are absolutely key for a brand. So I find often when I talk to people of a brand, they think it's, the visual identity only, and that's kind of where it stops, but it is so much more than that. And every interaction is important, especially the first 10 or so.
So what beyond the kind of visual look and feel, you mentioned the unboxing, like any other key interactions that you guys have focused on?
I would say one of the bigger ones at Mysa is the first 30 minutes. So when you get that product and you're installing it and you're playing around with it for the first time, from a product point of view, for example, our developers or product teams spend a disproportionate amount of time making sure the first 30 minutes is really, really great. Because if you get a bug in your app 3-4 months down the road from when you're using it, it's not really going to upset you. But if you hit a snag in the road right when you get the product, when you're super excited to set it up, it's going to have a massive impact. And we even see that from our customer reviews. We find, getting that first 30 minutes right leads to 5-star reviews. Getting it wrong leads to 1-star reviews. So that's where I would say we have spent a lot of effort.
When talking about you made a distinction of like bringing this year a lot more focus on brand. So in terms of your messaging, how would you make that distinction between going from a product to a brand focus?
Yeah, I am very lucky that I hired some great people who are way better at that than I am, because that's not my forte. But so we have a head of marketing, Amy Fisher, who came over from tourism actually, and she's done wonders there in kind of helping us transition from we're the smart thermostat for people with baseboard heaters, which is very technical and not very inspiring, to now we have messaging such as save money and the planet, smart thermostats for electric heating. So it's a lot more speaking more to the emotional side of things, but also focusing on our unique value proposition.
Yeah, that's something we always try to uncover for clients is a self-actualization. So, there's the products, there's the features, there's the strategic value in what they're purchasing, but underneath that is the self-actualization, and I guess that's what she uncovered there is save the planet. And if that's kind of the common denominator for a lot of your customers, and you're really getting into the deeper motivation between, in terms of why they picked you.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting how we transitioned over the years. We started with extremely, to the point, direct, almost marketing features, and then we went to functional benefits, and then we went to what they could actually do for you. And now we're kind of getting to that more emotional level. And ultimately, you need the whole mix, I would say. Can't have one without the other. Although if you can only pick one in the early days, I would go functional over emotional, because emotional is easy to get wrong if you don't understand your customers.
Yeah, agreed. And it also, like, you're doing TV now, so that's like kind of I would say your first probably like really rich touch point where you can really convey an emotion. So, and it takes time to get to that point where you can take that risk to produce it and get it out there from a media perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. And what I'm learning now through the team is, you TV even you can't just test with a little bit of budget. You kind of have to go at a certain scale to even see the results and impacts of it. So, yeah, I, I I think it's coming at the right time for us.
And then it's also not just media weight, but it's frequency and then duration, right? It's not a 12-week campaign, and that's the test. It's probably multiple, at least a year, or multiple years to really gauge it.
Yeah.
So another question we had here was around like what you view as your what do you view as your most important marketing touch point?
Yeah, my team always makes fun of me because I'm always about the sale, but I guess the sale, the conversion. But yeah, I think that's just selfishly. The most impactful marketing touch point, I think, is that moment between people becoming aware of us and people actually wanting our product. And that step in between, there are a couple hurdles. One big one is, will this product work in my home? And because compatibility is a big issue for us. And so easing those worries, I think, is one of the more important steps in your funnel. And so that touch point that could live either on our Facebook ads, on our website, or through email campaigns. But I would say that message, whenever it gets to people, is one of the more important ones.
I got you. And in terms of like, say your website, where is that a super important touch point for you guys?
Oh yeah, yeah. About what is it? 40% of all of our revenue essentially flows through our own website. We've launched in Best Buy and Home Depot now, but we're still our website is the major driver of revenue. And the great benefit is that we control the entire experience there. So we're listed on Amazon. Amazon does great, but we get one page on Amazon with a bunch of restrictions put on us. So it's really hard to tell a story and to get people, develop that emotional connection with your brand so that they come back and buy again or tell their friends and family about you. So yeah, from that point of view, I'd say our website is the more important marketing vehicle.
Any sort of key learnings on that, or best practices that you apply to that website?
Reviews. I think, yeah, we've spent a lot of time trying to get a lot of reviews on there and really try to leverage them everywhere, because it's, especially when you're talking B2C and you're talking, one to many essentially, having that, your social proof really comes from how many reviews you have. It's not, we haven't found the singular call outs to be super impactful. For example, so and so said this. We do use it and it helps, but if that's not paired with and 1,500 other people gave it 5 stars, it kind of loses its impact. So reviews is definitely important, and keeping it simple. I think over the years we use a fairly iterative approach where we add modules at a time or add single elements, but the downside of that is that it can become very cluttered, because as you are working on the website, to you it's still very straightforward and clear, because you're adding one thing at a time, but to somebody who comes to your website for the first time, it could be too much. And so simplifying messaging, simplifying what you're communicating to the absolute most important messages is also key from an e-com point of view.
And what's your I know I talked a bit to Zach about this, talking about the choice to build an internal marketing team. He talked about just their responsiveness, which it was very impressive in terms of how quickly your internal team is able to move on opportunities and get in market with stuff. Any other thoughts on that in terms of that choice to go internal? And I'd be curious also what your rationale is for when you pull in outside help in what you're doing.
Yeah. So yeah, the choice to go internal was really we wanted people to have a really deep understanding of our product and the industry and who we're for. And so, that is possible with external partners, definitely. But we kind of opted to just build that in-house and then move through all of the opportunities and experiments very quickly. And so, we employ all of our people and we try to make them feel safe and try to, make them okay with failing. Like I really try to make trying things, failing, and learning something that's really accepted and almost celebrated at the team. And so that was an important factor in that. And just the speed of execution, many times we've turned around campaigns in a week or two and on a moment's notice and gotten a lot of results from it by doing that. But then when we use outside help is really when we don't have the expertise, because we also don't really believe in trying to be the best at everything. And so what we've done in the past, for example, is we used Mute Six, an agency that was specialized in scaling up Facebook ads for e-commerce. They're based in the US. So we used them for about a year, and we kind of outgrew them in a way, where we saw a lot of great results initially, but then they didn't really understand the nuances. So kind of my learning from that was the bigger the agency, the more you're just another client on the list, and they don't really spend the time to actually understand you. So now we work with smaller agencies when they can really supplement their expertise. So for example, we've been working with this great agency in Quebec, MOPR, and we've used them because none of us are from Quebec. None of us actually speak French, understand the culture. So we develop the overarching brand strategy for North America and our tactics and campaigns, and then we work with them to tailor it to the local market. And we work with them to create, for example, the TV ad was created by them because they fully understand that market, and it turned out amazing. So it's really to supplement our team with either market knowledge or platform knowledge. So, some things we don't have experience with is web display and programmatic display. So we've worked with an agency there who have a lot of experience with that specifically. And then we always make sure that one person on our team is sort of like along for the ride and gets to learn a little bit more about it.
We are almost out of time here, but do you have any a final question for Dan?
Well, not so much. Most of it is all covered, but just circling back to the website, if you had to share, or for any brand touch point, top three things, it could be related to look and feel or content or the format. What would be the three best ideas or philosophy that you would share that somebody can build from?
Yeah, I would say copy over design. Copy is always going to move the needle more than design can. Not saying design is not important, just saying the words are more important in moving people. The other one is testing web designs or landing pages is also very important, and that can be qualitative. I think people resort to A/B testing all the time, but A/B testing, if I used to get this wrong in the beginning as well until I went to this conference in Austin with the top growth people in North America, and I learned that if you don't get 1,000 conversions a month, your A/B testing from a statistical point of view is actually a waste of time because you could have false positives because you don't have enough data. And so 1,000 conversions is a lot in a month. A lot of companies don't have that. So I often see people doing A/B testing and 20 conversions on A and 24 on B. So therefore B is better. But yeah, qualitative research on the website is important. One tool that we use frequently is Usability Hub, where you can essentially just upload images and get people what is the first thing you see, or you can do where do you want to click first, or you can get them to recall what was on the image. And so we've used that by, for example, taking snapshots of our hero, showing it to people, and then asking them, what did we just show you? And then you can see what they recall, because ultimately people have an attention span of 6 to 8 seconds or so. If you're trying to show them too much, you're not showing anything. So by doing those tests, we've uncovered a lot of things qualitatively without the need for A/B testing. So that's another one. And finally, I would say I think I always prefer iterative design over complete redesigns all the time, just to make sure if you have something that is working, it's really, really risky to start from scratch with it.
So, final question from me, Dan, is like, I guess what's your mindset now compared to when you started with Mysa? Like in your role, is it things like delegation, focusing more your time on the big picture? I'm just curious, like what your mindset is these days in your role.
Yeah, it's my mindset is I feel like I have to reinvent myself every single year. So I think we're on revision number 4, which nowadays I'm really just looking at enabling the team to do good work. And what that means in a startup is making sure they are clear on what we're doing. Things change so quickly, and now with multiple departments, and you start to see a little bit of silos. So just making sure that the team has all the information that they need to execute, because if they don't know, then it's really hard to execute on things if they don't know what's coming down the pipeline or what's important, for example. So that's a big part of my focus. And then as well, just looking at the next big growth lever. And over the years, the minimum size requirement for each lever is just getting bigger as we get bigger as a company. So where I used to think, what's the marketing tactic that's going to bring in the next $50,000? Now it's, okay, what's the next channel or big move that's going to bring in the next $1 million? And so that's been an adjustment for sure. So I'm trying to make fewer decisions of higher impact and look 6 months to 3 years ahead now.
And how are you going about that type of longer term planning?
What I find extremely useful actually is just modeling out some scenarios. And what that does is it just shows you what is required to move the needle. And so a lot of ideas, for example, when you then put in the assumptions, for example, I assume this will get us 10% more repeat customers or something like that, and you model it out, a lot of them are actually weeded out and not significant enough to move the needle. And so you end up with a set of smaller a pool of ideas that you then need to do a lot of due diligence in. So, for example, currently exploring taking our products to Australia and New Zealand, and working with a market research firm over there to really explore how many people have these heating systems and how is the market different, what are the nuances, what could a marketing mix look like over there. And so it's bigger items like that, as well as how can we work with utilities, how can we get more rebates. So fewer ideas and more homework.
With bigger stakes.
Yeah. yeah
As they say, that's why they pay us the big dollars, right? Cool. Well, Dan, we've got 1 minute left, so I know you're busy. Really appreciate you taking the time to talk with us.
Yeah, no, it was a pleasure. It was fun.
Awesome, man. Great meeting you, and all the best, I guess, in the days ahead.
Thank you. All right. Have a good one.